The game never stops, and neither do we. Welcome to the SDH Network. We're always around the corner from everywhere, and the Morning Espresso is brought to you by Oglethorpe University, Atlanta's premier undergraduate learning experience and soccer powerhouse. We've got big games coming up this weekend. We had big games yesterday as well that we have to talk about, with some flashpoints in both of those. We've got lots of different things to talk about, from the U.S. women's national team to domestic moves to local stars, all kinds of stuff to get into. Let's get into it. Pour yourself a cup of espresso, and let's go to Africa. The African Cup of Nations hits the quarterfinal stage today, and this round already feels like a referendum on belief as much as ability. Mali versus Senegal opens the weekend with one of the sharpest contrasts left in the tournament. Senegal, goals, pedigree, expectation as one of Africa's elite sides. Mali, they arrive with something different. They've never won this tournament before. They have conviction. Head coach Tom Saint-Fiet, he didn't mince words this week, saying his team was more tested by Morocco and Tunisia than they will be by Senegal. On the surface, maybe a little bit of bravado. Underneath, we'll see if his team really believes in it. And if they have, then you've got a group that is not going to be afraid of anything that Senegal can throw at them. Senegal should take this. Let's see if Mali can push them. Mali's run has been built on that discipline, that mental toughness more than dominance. They survived more than an hour with 10 against Tunisia in the round of 16. They forced extra time. They won it on penalties. Lassana Coulibaly said it best when he talked about mentality being the deciding factor for them. They're definitely not the favorites. They're not the front runners, but they have that belief. Senegal, they've scored 10 goals in the tournament. They're the second-ranked team on the continent. Very stable side. They score goals. They don't give up a whole lot. This is kind of the classic game that you get at this stage of the tournament. A decisive favorite, an underdog with nothing to lose. Friday also gives us Morocco against Cameroon. This is one that has a ton of history to it. We've talked about it all week. Cameroon is the last team to win in Morocco in a competitive match back in 2009. This is the team that knocked Morocco out in the semifinals the last time Morocco hosted AFCON. This is the team that eliminated Morocco from the 1982 World Cup and the 1994 World Cup. Cameroon has been the bogey team for Morocco. Morocco's been good in the tournament. They've been efficient. They haven't always been convincing, maybe feeling the pressure. Walid Regragui, the head coach, has defended his team's approach as realism in a tournament rather than caution. Cameroon, they, in a very rare situation for them, they come in as underdogs here. They have nothing to lose. When you have the talent that they have and that freedom to play with no heavy expectations here, that could be really dangerous. I think this could be the game of the tournament. Really looking forward to this one later this afternoon. Saturday brings us Algeria versus Nigeria, and this is the one that has the most off-the-field drama. Nigeria has been almost flawless on the field, but the team and their run in AFCON has been threatened by unresolved bonus payments that have briefly clouded everything. Captain Wilfred Ndidi stepped in. He pledged to personally cover payments if necessary to get his players into training and on the field, and he's helped turn a potential distraction into a moment of unity. Now, according to reports, the bonus payments are in process. We've heard this before. It's happened over the years. Ndidi stepping up and saying, look, don't worry about it. I'm going to cover it if it doesn't get handled. That's amazing from a captain. That's real leadership, and that helps push that stuff to the side. Now this Nigeria team brings in one of the best attacks in the tournament into this heavyweight showdown with Algeria, whose young core, led by Ibrahim Maza, has been one of the stories of the whole competition. Egypt and Cote d'Ivoire closes the quarterfinals. Two giants. They're trying to rediscover their best versions of themselves. Neither has been perfect in this tournament. Both have been fine. Both know how to navigate these sorts of tournaments. And it just keeps coming back to the theme of what a quarterfinal's like. It's not really about just what looks good on paper. It's about who handles those momentum swings, the emotional swings in a knockout match. Opta supercomputer projects, one, that it's going to be very tight. They say Morocco and Senegal are the two statistical favorites left in the tournament. Nigeria and Algeria close behind. Egypt and Cote d'Ivoire almost dead even. Mali and Cameroon are the two underdogs at this point in the final 8. Cannot wait for this to start. First game is at 11 a.m. this morning, then 2 and same times tomorrow. You can watch all of it on BN Sports. If you don't have that already in your cable or streaming or satellite packages, you can get it with our friends at Fnatis, fntz.co/soccer down here to get signed up and to help us a little bit while you're at it. Some heavyweight matches yesterday, both had some storylines on and off the field. Let's go to London first at the Emirates. Arsenal, they missed a golden chance to stretch their lead at the top of the Premier League to 8 points. I said yesterday that 8 points felt a whole lot different than 5. 6 points, if you're Manchester City and you're Aston Villa, you feel like you got a lifeline yesterday. Arsenal just wasn't good enough to get this one done. Goalless draw with Liverpool. Mikel Arteta, they controlled large parts of it. Arne Slot's defending champions grew into the game. It was just a stalemate. Both teams maybe feel like they deserved a little bit more, but both teams are probably happy that they didn't lose the point. It keeps Arsenal in 6 points, 6-point lead. It keeps the title race alive. These are the kind of games that you look back at in April and May, and you're like, that could have been a little bit more. That could have won it for us then. It could have separated us then. It could have been the difference then. It's not. Late in the match, some of that frustration boiled over in a moment that shifted the conversation a bit. Connor Bradley from Liverpool went down injured near the touchline. Gabriel Martinelli reacted as if it was time wasting. He threw the ball towards him, tried to usher him off the pitch. It became clear that Bradley was genuinely hurt, and it felt more serious. Arne Slot said that he was sure Martinelli wouldn't have acted that way if he had known the extent of the injury. By the end of the night, Martinelli had already issued a public apology on social media. These things happen in these kinds of games. And yes, you do see time wasting in these moments, and sometimes it is not time wasting. And that was the case here. Let's go to Saudi Arabia, the Spanish Supercopa, Real Madrid and Atleti kind of derby that never needs any extra help creating drama. The opening goal from Real Madrid, a thunderous Federico Valverde free kick from probably about 35 yards out. Then they doubled the lead when Rodrigo finished a great goal, flowing move in the second half. Atleti answered pretty quickly with Alexander Sorloth. Final half hour, Real Madrid had to hold on. They did it. Xabi Alonso maybe gets a little more breathing room in Madrid, but that doesn't last very long. 2-1 win. They will play Barcelona in the Supercopa final. That's why that breathing room doesn't last very long. Alonso gets a chance to win his first trophy in charge of the team. But as always, there's drama. Vinny Jr. and Atleti manager Diego Simeone were locked in a running subplot throughout the match. Words were exchanged, gestures towards the crowd, tension spilling towards both benches. At one point, Alonso even had to leave his technical area to pull Vinny away. Simeone said that he had a bad memory afterwards and couldn't remember what he was saying to Vinny. There's clips on social media of Cholo, Diego Simeone, telling Vinny that Florentino Perez is going to kick him out of the team and to remember that he told him that. Yeah. Trash talk is real. It happens all the time. Simeone saying he has a bad memory was a funny way to brush it off. But what he also said about, things happen on the field and they stay on the field, that is also true. Any advantage you can find, there are people who will try to find it. Diego Simeone, if you know his history, just ask David Beckham. Yes, he will try to find any little tiny advantage, whether it is psychological, mental, or maybe of the acting persuasion. Whatever it takes, you will use that to try to win the match. He did. It did not work. And Vinny reminded Simeone of another loss in a knockout game as well. So we'll see that subplot as those two will meet again here in the future. But it's Barca and Real Madrid on the weekend. Whoo. U.S. women's national team January roster is out. Friendlies coming up against Paraguay and Chile and California. Group tells you a lot about where Emma Hayes is right now in her process. It's outside of a FIFA international window, so the roster is entirely made up of NWSL players. It's an evaluation opportunity for the players that are picked. Some of them are regulars, some of them are not. At the center of the spotlight is Trinity Rodman, returning to the national team setup after some injuries in 2025. She also enters this camp as a free agent, her situation becoming part of the broader conversation around NWSL player movement and compensation rules. But she gives this group star power, context. She leads this roster in experience, even at just 23 years old. With her age, the experience put to the side, her age still makes her feel like part of the future rather than the past. And that's what Emma Hayes is, I think, getting at with this group. It is about the future. It's about expanding the playing pool, stress testing depth, bunch of players getting their first senior call-ups. Players will get an opportunity to push for larger roles ahead of the She Believes Cup, ahead of the CONCACAF W Championship later this year. It's not about locking things in, but it's about building layers to this overall roster. This is a strong cycle of renewal right now for Emma Hayes and the U.S. women's national team. Renewal in Mexico, the Liga MX Clausura starts tonight. Urgency always with the opening whistle in these kind of short season setups. Defending champions Toluca, they open their title defense away to Monterrey. Chivas will host Pachuca, another big game. There's no slow burn in this kind of a format. You're playing less than 20 games, then going into a playoff. It's a sprint, and it raises the stakes. It doesn't give you time to build. You got to come in straight out of the gate. Toluca's storyline towers over everything else right now. They are the defending two-time champions. They are chasing a rare three-time, three-peat, tricampeonato. If they can pull that off, Club America are the only other team that have done that in the modern era of the short seasons. That's big history. That's big pressure. Change defines the Clausura as much as ambition, too. Chivas especially, sweeping rebuild after moving on from more than a dozen players, including Chicharito. They've brought in Brian Gutierrez from Chicago. Cruz Azul, they've had to sort out a stadium situation right now, and they are going to play their games at Puebla's home stadium. Not ideal, but that's where they will be for the season. You got logistical curveballs, you got fresh starts, you got all the transfer drama, you got history. The Clausura, always fun in Liga MX. Games start tonight. Let's talk domestic focus and updates. West Brom, they are set to appoint Eric Ramsey, Minnesota United's head coach. That is not ideal for the Loons as preseason starts next week. His rise from Manchester United assistant to being a respected young manager in MLS now takes him back to England. Tough spot going into West Brom, trying to keep them up. But with what we saw from his Minnesota United, where it was not very expansive, not very fun, to be perfectly honest. It was very defensive, and they didn't really want the ball, and they were great on the counter. They were deadly on the counter, but maybe not the most inspiring football at times. I'm curious to see, one, how that translates to West Brom. I think it will. I think it will work pretty well. Two, what does Minnesota do, and maybe does Minnesota have more ambition to be more than that? Cam Knowles is emerging as the front runner to take over for the Loons. He brings the familiarity with the organization. He was an assistant last year, track record of player development. But does it come with a remit of being a little more expansive? I think, and this is just my opinion, teams that are heavy on the defensive side, teams that are heavy on wanting the ball less, I think they have a lower ceiling than teams that can make things happen themselves, that want the ball more. Doesn't mean they can't be successful. That's not what I'm saying. I think their ceiling is lower. I think at some point, and it's something that I've really come around to thinking in the game, at some point in these big games, especially in leagues that have playoffs, at some point, you need somebody to step up and go win the game for you. You need game changers. You need game winners. Minnesota, in the way that they played, they took that away from players. You didn't really have much of that. I think they can be better and have a higher ceiling if they're not as defense dominant. We'll see. We'll see. Ramsey did well, don't get me wrong, but I think his approach limited the Loons as well as maybe solidified things at the time. Maybe a next step is a big thing for Minnesota, and we'll see. I think it could be a door-opening moment for the Loons. We'll find out. In the women's game, Sam Coffey of the U.S. women's national team, drawing interest from abroad. Manchester City is linked to bringing in Sam Coffey from the NWSL. Highlights that growing conversation around NWSL players staying or going. Orlando City, they're finalizing a loan move for winger Nicolas Rodriguez. Also trying to get the deal for Luis Muriel to leave done as well. Denver Summit in the NWSL, they have landed one of the biggest college signings of the cycle. Stanford standout Jasmine Akey joins Denver. Boston, they have signed Colombian international Jorlyn Carabali from Brighton. World Cup, Olympic experience, 2 expansion teams with 2 good signings. Bay FC, they have signed Alex Pfeiffer to a 3-year deal. She's just 18, but she already owns NWSL history as its youngest goal scorer. Now gets a fresh chapter. Houston Dash, they have brought in Leah Klinke from Notre Dame. She gets to start her pro career in her hometown. LAFC, bad news on their front. Jacob Schaffelberg, he's going to miss Canada's January camp and LAFC's preseason after undergoing surgery for a degenerative condition. This is what they think will solve it and make it right going forward. I'm not sure what the condition is, but he's expected to miss up to 8 weeks as he gets back on the field. Malik Henry steps in from Toronto for Canada's roster as they prepare for games in a non-FIFA window against Guatemala. Colorado, they strengthened their midfield by acquiring Nigerian international Hamzat Ojediran from Lens in France, adding some physicality, adding some European experience. And in Philadelphia, Alejandro Bedoya agreed to another 1-year extension through 2026. He blends his leadership on the field with a little bit of influence in player development and maybe getting some experience across the front office as well. Around the corner, SDH AM is starting this morning at 9:05 with John Nelson. Packed lineup, new Lexington SC signing Philip Goodrum joining the show to talk about the next chapter in his career. Valdosta High School head coach Cody Case checks in, getting you ready on what's going on in South Georgia as the Georgia high school season is about a month away. And former Atlanta United captain and one of the founders of Beyond Goals Mentoring, Michael Parkhurst, brings his perspective to the conversation. It's a morning that runs from the grassroots to the global stage. If you miss it live, you can always catch it on demand on YouTube, on Twitch, and wherever you get your podcast from Soccer Down Here. A little bit of Red Clay soccer report for you this morning. Braden Dunham's recent call-up yesterday to the USWNT men's national team. It's the latest milestone in a 2025 that has been just a joy to watch up close. Started in the Atlanta United Academy, continued with standout performances for Atlanta United 2 and MLS Next Pro, reached another level as he helped Furman to the national semifinals in the NCAA College Cup. Now really fully cemented on the national radar. His rise feels like a blueprint for how that local development can turn into national opportunity. And it's not always a straight line. For Braden, it was a little bit of a late blooming situation. But Braden Dunham, in his age group right now, is one of the standouts in the country. And that came from his time in Atlanta and continuing to grind and work. And that's the thing about Braden, is watching him up close. He didn't get discouraged in those moments where it was a little bit slower rise. He didn't get discouraged. He worked harder. And I love to see that. And I love to see good things happen for players who do that. And Braden is the poster boy for that. So continued success for Braden Dunham. Excited to see him continuing to get these opportunities with the U.S. national team pool. The refill quickly on the Espresso this morning. Manchester City, they completed the signing of Antoine Semenyo this morning from Bournemouth. Deal worth more than £60 million. The Ghana international is locked into a contract through 2031. 10 goals this season for Bournemouth. Really a big help for Pep Guardiola, another dynamic option in the attack. But they need some defensive help in a big way. Milan, they missed on a chance to close the gap on Inter. Dramatic 1-1 draw with Genoa at the San Siro yesterday. Rafael Leao, stoppage time header, rescued a point, moments before Genoa missed a penalty at the death. 19-year-old Yale Treppi produced a moment of magic off the bench, a stunning late equalizer for Cagliari as they rallied from 2 goals down to draw 2-2 at Cremonese. The point keeps Cagliari clear of the relegation zone and underlines how quickly these young players can change games when given opportunities. PSG, they claimed their 4th straight French Super Cup after a dramatic penalty shootout win over Marseille. 2-2 draw in Kuwait in that one. Goalkeeper Lucas Chevalier was the hero. Key saves after PSG forced extra time with a last gasp equalizer. And Manchester United still trying to figure out what their managerial situation is going to be in the long term. Xavi Hernandez, his name has come up. No talks underway. The former Barca boss has made it clear in the media that he is eager for a Premier League opportunity. Could Xavi be the guy at Manchester United to make it all work? He's going to need them to spend some money, and they don't have a lot of money, and that's a little complicated. He's also going to need time, especially with the style of play that he will want to bring in a club that is not used to that style of play. I thought Xavi did pretty well at Barcelona. I think he got a little bit of a raw deal there. Can that work at Manchester United? I worry about it just because it hasn't worked for anybody else, and I don't know if they're going to give him the time that he needs for that to work. But I have a ton of respect for him as a manager, and I want to see him back in the game. Final whistle. From AFCON pressure to big nights in England and in Spain, a new U.S. women's national team chapter, and the Clausura kicking off in Mexico, along with everything else. Plenty to carry into the weekend. It's just one of those moments where you look up and there's so much happening in the game. It can be overwhelming in some ways, but it can be really exciting in other ways. Enjoy the weekend. Soak it all in. We'll be back on Monday with plenty of coverage from Marietta as Atlanta United opens training camp on the field. And the road to a new season, season 10, officially begins. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.